Good morning, ladies, and happy Mass Monday. This is Bonnie from Bonnie's Bargains. And so the mask that I'm got on this morning, I didn't want to put you through that, is the watermelon sheet mask. And I tell you right now, it is feeling really good. And it's by Yesul, Yesul, and you can leave it on probably about 15 to 20 minutes. So during that 15 to 20 minutes, I just thought I'd chit chat with you and tell you one of my stories. This was when I was around 16 or 17 years old, and this is a dating story. True story. So I was raised, of course, in Alabama. My mom and dad's name was Tom and Frances. And my dad and mom were very strict on me, very, very strict. And I was the only child. And so they were always I'm sorry, that's my dog over there, Shadow. And they were always keeping up with me every minute of what I was doing, so forth, so on. So I had a date one night, and I lived in a small town that at that time had one red light. I don't think it has anything right now. It was such a small town. We didn't have a theater, roller rink, anything like that. No, there wasn't anything for the young people to do. Just one second. Sorry, my little Shadow stays everywhere I do, so I have to pet him sometimes. He's spoiled. But anyway, so I had a date, and I had, so this had to be when I was 16, because I had just learned how to drive, and I had started dating. My mom let me start dating at 16. And so I hadn't really known the guy. His name was Frankie. I hadn't really known Frankie that long, but he was a little bit leery of my dad, because my dad could be very, have her home not a minute late. And so they were letting me stay out till 11 o'clock. And so we were going to a place, really small town called Louisville, Alabama, and it had a drive-in theater. And so it was a double date. And at that time, my best friend was Jill, and she had a date with one of the guys that I went to school with by the name of Bobby Joe. I'd sort of set them up so we could go and all have a good time. And so we went to the movie. We got out of the movie early, and it was only like a 20 to 30 minute drive from Louisville to go back to Clayton, where I lived. And so we decided that Bobby Joe was going to let me drive his straight shift car. And I had been learning how to drive a straight shift because my dad wanted me to know how to do that. I always know how to drive straight shift and an automatic. So Bobby Joe said, okay, I know this dirt road that we can go down, and then we'll have plenty of time to get you back home by 11 o'clock. And so Jill, my friend, was spending the night with me that night. Well, I said, as long as we can be home by 11, because if we don't, my mom and dad's going to flip out. And he's like, oh, no problem. So we go and we get in the car. And so he takes us, and it was in a wooded area. Now, trust me, out in the country, and I give you my word on this, all we were doing was talking, having fun, and then I was going to drive the car. So Bobby Joe I come from the back seat. Jill gets I go in the front seat. Jill gets in the back seat. And so Bobby Joe's sitting by me, and he's like, all right, Bonnie, let's do it. So I put that thing in first gear, and then I went in second gear, And then I was coming down in third gear, and I was cruising on this old country dirt road. And we were driving, and we were laughing, and sometimes I'd be sputting. You know how it is when you're learning how to drive in automatic. But, guys, I got that car going, and it was a souped-up car. I got that thing going, and all of a sudden, it had been raining. And that car, I drove it into a big mud puddle. And so the car sort of went like this. And so as soon as it did, and we came up out of that mud puddle on a dirt road, it just sputtered and went dead. Now you have to understand, it is dark and there's mosquitoes. And so Bobby Joe gets out of the car and he's like, oh no, we're flooded. And I'm getting nervous. And I said, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to get home? And Bobby Joe said, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So he says, I said, do you know anybody that lives down this dirt road? And he says, I do, but it's about 3 miles down the road. Because remember, we're out in the country. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, well, we better get with it. So we started walking down that dirt road. Well, the further that we got from the car, because he had left the lights on for us to see as far as that we could. And I said, do you think your battery's going to go dead? And he's like, no, if we can walk fast and make it to the house. So the further that we got down that dirt road, it was pitch dark. You couldn't see a thing. Not a thing. Well, it was scary. It was so scary. And so we finally got to the house, 3 miles down the road. Well, the man in the house, his name was Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank heard all of us out there. And so he let out his dogs, and he had like 3 or 4 dogs. Well, they started chasing us. Well, couldn't see where I was going, and those dogs came after us, and guys, I turned around and I started running like a madman. And there is no way you could outchase those dogs. But then out came Mr. Frank with a shotgun, and he started calling us dogs, and he turned on the outside lights, and Bobby Joe started saying, Mr. Frank, it's Bobby Joe. And he said his last name, and they knew each other. And so Mr. Frank called his dogs back. Well, my heart was just, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I'm not kidding. So Mr. Frank said, well, I'm not going to tell you what Mr. Frank said, because I still remember those words to this day. I can't say them on YouTube. But what he was saying was, what the heck are you guys doing out here at midnight? Why aren't you at home in bed? He said, do your parents know what's going on? And at that time, they didn't have cell phones. They only had landlines. And I said, oh, Mr. Frank, my dad's going to kill me. And he said, yes, he is. I know your dad. He will kill you. And he said, get in the pickup truck. Get in the pickup truck. I'm going to drive you guys to Tom's, my dad's. Well, there wasn't room in a pickup truck for all of us to sit. So the boys had to sit in the back of the truck. And Jill and I got in the front seat. And so we talked to Mr. Frank, and I said, Mr. Frank, please don't let my dad kill me. And he said, oh, no, you're out here. You should have been home by 11 o'clock. You're going to have to face the music. He said, you should have never been out here. And then we tried to explain to him about me driving the car, so forth, so on. We left the car out there in the middle of the road, so it was a nice car. I know Bobby Joe was upset, but he was also a little bit scary of my dad. So we got home. All the lights in the house was on. My dad and mom had called the police, and they had called the Louisville police to look for us, and then the Clayton police was out looking for us. And then when we drove up, Bobby Joe's dad was there. Jill's dad was there. And there was my mom and dad. And Frankie's mom and dad didn't, I won't go into that, but he had a little bit of a bad home life. And so he wasn't, from what I understand, he wasn't with his mom and dad. And I don't remember, he was living with his aunt. So we get there, and Dad comes out, and he looks at me, and he says, "You get in the house right now." And so I'm like, I didn't say one word. I was so afraid of my dad, and he never touched me, but I was horrified of him. My dad never touched me. But when he spoke in that tone, you knew that you had crossed the line. So I went in the house, and Frankie comes behind me, and Mom says to Frankie, "Are you hungry?" And he says, "I am." And so she says, "Well, go in there and fix you a sandwich." And so Mom looks at me and she says, "You have done it. Where have you been?" And so Frankie, so Bobby Joe and Frankie and Bobby Joe's dad, they leave. They've got to go see about the car. Now, by then, it's probably, because Mom and Dad had called the police to let them know that I was home. And we lived in a little town, and my dad and Mom, you know, they didn't want no gossip to get out about me, their daughter being out past midnight with Boy and calling the police. And so, Frank, they left, and Jill ended up spending the night with me. And he says, "You girls get in the bed right now. I don't want to hear one word. I can't talk about it." And he says, "But we are getting this straightened out first thing in the morning. And I want the truth, and I mean the truth." And he said, "And Bonnie, we're going to talk about the repercussions that you're going to have." I went to bed that night. I didn't sleep any. Jill was over there just snoring. She was one of those kinds. She wasn't a scaredy cat like I was. Like I said, I knew. Oh, so it was the next morning. I got up, and I could hear my mom and dad talking, and my mom was trying to take up for me a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, and said, "Wait, and hear her story, her and Jill's story." And so we got up the next morning and told the true story. But I think that my dad was very disappointed in me because I didn't make it home by 11, and that we were out in the middle of nowhere in the country, and a lot could have happened to us, and the dogs, and then getting Mr. Frank up, Mr. Frank having to drive us home from the country to the town, because I lived in town, right outside of town. But those are some memories you never forget, but you don't want to ever go through again. And my dad ended up telling me, and I told him the story, and he said, "Well, you should have never been out there in the first place, because if you broke down, you had no way to get in touch with me, and I'm just very disappointed in you." He said, "This is probably, you're 16 now, And this is probably one of the most disappointing times I've had in you. That just broke my heart because I knew I'd embarrassed him, but I also knew that he was worried about me, as he should have been, you know. But it only took 2 or 3 days to get back to normal, and everything was all right. But yes, he did have some of the people of the small town of Clayton, Alabama, ask him, you know, about what was going on with your daughter. And my dad just said, well, she and some others did some crazy things and talked about the car. And I guess Bobby Joe and his dad and Frankie went out to get the car, and it was still flooded. So they had to wait until the very next day to go get his car. But Bobby Joe's dad wasn't upset, except that he had to get up in the middle of the night, and they lived way out in the country and had to come get him. So that's one of my dating adventures that I'll never forget at the age of 16. You know, people say that cell phones aren't a good thing, but at that time and place, that would have been a wonderful thing to have a cell phone. So, but yeah, have you ever done anything like that before? I mean, I have other adventures, but that really, I was raised to be, you know, I was raised that you could look at me and I'd cry. And my mom always had a soft heart for people. And so I was brought up where, I don't know, that you just, I'm like her. I'm like, excuse me, I'm like my mom. And so I can understand, looking back now, I can understand, but I do want you to know we had some fun and we laughed and we giggled and we talked about that for years through school about what had happened. And my dad never did blame it on Frankie. He blamed it on me, none of the other people, that I should have had better sense, that he raised a daughter that had some sense. So that's my story. And it's funny if you could have seen us going down that dark country road, dirt road, and you could hear things, squirrels, and I'm horrified of snakes. And so Alabama has a lot of snakes. So I was always thinking snakes were, oh yeah. So I'll never forget that. So I've had my mask on long enough. Oh, okay. So let's take this off. It's going to be scary. And this is still the best thing since sliced bread right here. I've got where I can maneuver this thing around. Okay, so let's do this. Oh, this still has serum. And so let's take it off. Oh, look at that. So I think I told you in the last video when I did Mass Monday that there's still serum in here from this watermelon mask. And just to let you know, this is the box it came in, so you can sort of be on the lookout for it. This is what the mask actually looked at. And there were 5 of them in there, and they were, got them at Ross. There were 5 in there and only $3.99. I would definitely reuse these. Good mask. Oh. And so, anyway, when I get off the camera, what I plan to do is I have a little traveling bottle, plastic bottle, and I just pour the serum in that little plastic bottle. And so every night before I go to bed and throughout the day, I just dot that serum on my face or hands, and it feels so good. So don't throw the serum away. Keep using it. That's part of the bargain of getting one of these. So I hope you enjoyed my story. I enjoyed spending this morning with you, and it's actually Monday morning. So that's the reason Mom's got to have her some coffee. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I am going to be doing some more videos today. I got some hauls, some good bargains, guys. Whoa, some good bargains. And I've also got to get in the mail my 200th subscriber. I've got to who won the giveaway, Becky. I got to get that in the mail today. So I'm going to be a busy person. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me. And please don't forget to be a rainbow in someone's clouds today. Bye, guys.